Joining us now from Dallas, the city's former two-term Democratic mayor, first African-American to hold that office, Ron Kirk. He's also the former U.S. trade representative under Barack Obama. Ambassador Kirk, thanks for being with us. You were mayor of Dallas from 1995 to 2002. Tell us what you know from your time when you were running the city and then afterwards. Just tell us about the state of relations between the community and the police force.
Well, Mark, first of all, thanks for giving me an opportunity to join you. What's really just a horrifically sad day for our city. And I have to say again, even though I've said it many times, but I can't say it enough, how much I hurt for and are sending my prayers to the families of those incredibly brave law enforcement officers who were executed last night. You know, being in the unique position, I guess, of both having been privileged to serve this city as a mayor, but also having been a man of color who grew up in the segregated South. I have so many conflicting emotions about what happened. Not a conflict in terms of the cowardliness of the act, the lack of rationale behind it. But our first responsibility as public leaders, whether you're a mayor, a commissioner, the president, a governor, there's nothing that is more central to our work than to keep those whom we serve safe. And so that was always at the forefront of what I did. And I considered myself fortunate, frankly, Mark, during my almost 7 years as mayor, that we had reasonably good and very, very positive relations between our police and our communities, and particularly our communities of color. Dallas was one of those cities that very early believed in community policing, invested in it. You're not always going to get it right, but I'd like to believe one of the things that's helped us get through some of the difficulties you're seeing in other cities is that we kind of made that down payment on that. And we are a city, as our mayor said during the prayer vigil earlier, that has learned a lot and embraced the challenge we confronted after what happened here 50 years ago in terms of President Kennedy, to try to become a more inclusive community. We're not perfect, but it's a great place to live and work. And what happened here last night is no reflection of the goodwill, of the faith of the overwhelming majority of people who live here.
Ambassador Kirk, the hashtag Dallas Strong is already being used, and you've got an incredible city and a strong city.
Mark,
I'm just wondering, though, and just...
Earpiece keeps falling out, I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
Okay. Yes, sir. I appreciate you joining us and love your city and know how strong it is, and I've seen the hashtag already, Dallas Strong, but I'm just wondering your sense of how the community is dealing with this. Is there shock? Is there anger? What is the sort of sentiment of the folks there about what has happened and what needs to happen next?
Well, you know, I know it's inevitable. I would love to say it won't come. There isn't as much anger right now. There is just a collective sense of horror and shock that something like this could happen in our city, and particularly because, like other cities, we have had a number of protests over the last several years where the public and people of different faiths and different communities have expressed their concerns over the violence against young African-American men by some police, whether it was in Baltimore or St. Louis or others. But those have been peaceful protests. And there is an anger, but mostly because the fact that last night, by all accounts, was a very peaceful protest. The police got incredibly high marks from everyone that I spoke with that was involved in that because of their professionalism, their courtesy. I mean, people talked about the police took selfies with the marchers. They weren't in riot gear. You know, in one sense, if there is a silver lining, it was a wonderful manifestation of what good police work looks like. And then we had this ridiculous, horrible tragedy that wiped away all of that, including what needs to be a very legitimate conversation about what bad policing looks like in terms of what happened in Baton Rouge and Minneapolis. But I think there's, you know, right now it's still very raw, as you could imagine, Mark, and just an collective sense of sorrow and hurt among the city.
Ambassador Kirk, let me ask you. Hillary Clinton has said today that she thinks one of the things that needs to happen is for there to be national standards applied to police forces, particularly when it comes to the use of force. Do you think that's a good idea? And if you do think it's a good idea, how much do you think that would do to help reduce the incidence of things like what happened in Baton Rouge and Minneapolis?
You know, we can look, having been a mayor, the great thing about being a mayor is that we will steal anything that works. And there are great examples of how to do this and do this right. And, you know, maybe we have those national standards. And I've seen a lot of your experts throughout the day from the law enforcement community talk about how much could be avoided, like what we saw happen in Minneapolis, by the proper training on the upfront. And we need to do that. But we also need to have a conversation, and an honest conversation, of how we stop talking past one another and engaging in what I think is a very non-productive conversation about whose pain is the deepest. Is it the black community because of the wrongful termination of life for our boys? Is it the fear in the police community? And we need to begin to do, as I think I heard Charles Blow articulately beautifully say earlier, let's talk about the one thing we all want. What we most want is for these people to come home safe. And so, yes, we know what to do. There are plenty of good examples and teaching lessons on how to do great police work. We've done a lot of that in Dallas under the leadership of Chief Brown. But it's also time for our leaders of both parties and of all perspectives to realize that words matter. And as our mayor says, we need to be careful how quickly we respond to all of these tragedies, understand the rawness of those emotions, and be a little more thoughtful on both sides when we respond, and try to talk to one another instead of past one another.
Right. Ambassador, let me ask you this question, Ambassador Kirk. I know you're a friend of President Obama's. Obviously, you served under him. But do you think he's done enough to advance that conversation?
Well, I think the president has been a wonderful role model, and I before I came on air, I probably had as strong of a conversation with one of my closest Republican friends, who I reached out to express my frustration at one of our state leaders who led the effort, ironically, to pass open carry and to do everything he could to not even have us have a conversation about the difficult position that we put police officers in a state that wants everybody to be armed and walking around carrying guns. And he had the unmitigated gall to somehow blame the protesters for what happened last night. And my friend's response was, oh, this is somehow President Obama's fault. The president, through his calm, through his personality, has done more to try to advance civility in our discourse. But I don't think we can escape a conversation about the efforts to dehumanize this president, to do everything but recognize him and the corrosive effect that it has.